The pre-dawn air crackled with tension as Thicket surveyed the assembled army from a rocky outcrop. Behind him loomed the sorcerer's citadel, a twisted monument of black stone and writhing shadows that seemed to devour the very light around it. The vortex of darkness surrounding the fortress pulsed ominously, as if aware of the impending assault. Thicket's gaze swept over the diverse forces arrayed before him. Humans stood shoulder to shoulder with reformed monsters, united in purpose if not in form. Elven archers nocked arrows tipped with magical light, while dwarven siege engineers made last-minute adjustments to their arcane weaponry. In the air, griffin riders circled restlessly, awaiting the signal to attack. Lyra approached, her face set in grim determination. The scouts have returned. The citadel's outer defenses are even more formidable than we anticipated. Thicket nodded, unsurprised. The sorcerer has had centuries to prepare. We knew this wouldn't be easy. But Garrick joined them, his armor gleaming with holy sigils. Easy or not, it ends today, one way or another. A low rumble of thunder rolled across the sky, and Thicket felt the curse within him stir in response. He pushed it down, focusing instead on the faces of his companions, on the trust they'd placed in him. It's time, he growled. Signal the attack. War horns blared across the valley, their call echoed by roars, shouts and battle cries from 1,000 throats. As one, the army surged forward towards the citadel. The response was immediate and devastating. The vortex surrounding the fortress flared to life, tendrils of pure darkness lashing out at the approaching forces. Whole sections of the army simply vanished, swallowed by the shadows, the air filled with screams and the acrid smell of dark magic. Press on, Thicket roared, charging forward. Don't let up. Mages in the rear ranks launched counterattacks, balls of elemental fury arcing towards the citadel. They splashed against magical barriers, causing ripples of energy but little apparent damage. As they neared the outer walls, new horrors awaited. Gargoyles, their stone flesh animated by foul sorcery, took flight from the ramparts. They dive-bombed the advancing army, razor-sharp claws rending flesh and armor alike. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. Archers, target those flyers. A hail of arrows filled the sky, many finding their marks. Gargoyles fell from the air, shattering on the ground below. But for each one felled, two more seemed to take its place. Thicket fought his way through the melee, his massive form providing cover for smaller allies. He caught sight of Finn darting between larger combatants, his daggers flashing as he hamstrung gargoyles and shadow beasts alike. Thicket Garrick's voice carried over the din of battle. The walls. We need to breach them. Nodding in understanding, Thicket began to gather a small team around him. Finn. Lyra. To me, he called out, we're going to open a path. As they fought their way towards the citadel's main gate, the full array of the sorcerer's defenses revealed itself. Spectral archers materialized on the battlements, loosing arrows that phased through physical armor, as if it didn't exist. From murder holes poured a viscous, acidic slime that ate through everything it touched. Thicket's team suffered losses with each step, brave souls falling to magic and mundane dangers alike. But they pressed on, drawing ever closer to their goal. Just as they reached the gate, a bone-chilling roar shook the very ground. From behind the citadel rose a monstrous form, a dragon, but one corrupted almost beyond recognition. Its scales were midnight black, crackling with eldritch energy. Where its eyes should have been, there were only swirling vortexes of darkness. By all the gods, Lyra breathed, her voice barely audible over the sounds of battle. The shadow dragons surveyed the battlefield before loosing a breath attack, unlike anything they'd ever seen. Where the dark energy touched, it didn't just kill, it erased, leaving behind gaps in reality itself. Hundreds of soldiers, both monstrous and human, simply ceased to exist in an instant. Thicket felt despair threatening to overwhelm him. How could they stand against such power? As if sensing his doubt, the curse within him surged, whispering promises of the strength he could wield if only he gave in. But then he caught sight of Garrick, standing resolute in the face of the dragon's attack, his holy shield creating a bubble of safety around him. He saw Finn, battered but unbowed, helping wounded comrades to safety. He remembered Grimclaw's unwavering loyalty, Whisper's quiet courage. Drawing himself up to his full height, Thicket let out a roar that rivaled the dragon's. "We are not defeated," he bellowed. "For every one of us that falls, 100 rise in spirit to take their place. This ends today." His words ignited a fire in the hearts of the army. With renewed vigor, they pushed forward. Thicket turned his attention back to the gate, determination blazing in his eyes. "Breach team with me," he growled. "We're going to carve a path into the heart of this citadel, no matter the cost." As Thicket and his chosen few prepared to assault the main gate, the battle raged on all around them. The shadow dragon wheeled overhead, preparing for another devastating attack. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp and twist around the citadel. The citadel's main gate shuddered under the relentless assault of Thicket's breach team. Enchanted battering rams and spells of destruction hammered against the ancient wood and iron, each impact sending shockwaves through the air. Thicket himself stood at the forefront, his massive form a shield for the smaller members of the team. Almost there, Finn shouted over the din, his keen eyes spotting the growing cracks in the gate's structure. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Thicket, behind you." Thicket whirled, just in time to see Whisper materialize, her ethereal form flickering with urgency. "The southern wall," she gasped. "It's a trap." No sooner had the words left her spectral lips than an ear-splitting explosion rocked the battlefield. The southern section of the citadel's wall collapsed inward, creating a breach. For a moment, hope surged through the army's ranks until the dust cleared. Pouring out of the breach came a horde of shadow creatures, more numerous and terrible than any they'd faced before. Leading them was a figure that made Thicket's blood run cold. Malakar, one of the human mages who had joined their cause, his eyes now glowing with malevolent power. "Fools," Malakar's voice boomed, amplified by dark magic. "Did you really think the sorcerer would leave his fate to chance? I am but one of many eyes he has placed in your midst." The revelation sent shockwaves through the army. Soldiers turned to each other with suspicion, the hard-won trust between species beginning to fracture. Thicket roared in defiance, "Stand firm. We are more than the sum of our fears." But the damage was done. As Malakar's shadow horde crashed into the flank of the army, chaos erupted. The neat battle lines dissolved into pockets of desperate fighting. Lyra's voice cut through the madness. "Thicket, we have to split up. You take the gate, I'll try to contain this breach." Nodding grimly, Thicket turned back to the main gate just as it finally splintered under the assault. "Breach team, with me," he bellowed, charging into the citadel's courtyard. Inside, they found themselves in a nightmarish landscape. The very stones seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, and gravity itself felt wrong. Spiraling towers defied physics, and pools of liquid shadow bubbled ominously. "Well, this is homie," Finn quipped, though his voice trembled slightly. Garrick pointed towards a central keep. "There, that has to be where the sorcerers holed up." As they fought their way across the courtyard, Thicket felt the curse within him growing stronger. Each shadow creature they slew seemed to feed the darkness inside him, making it harder to distinguish friend from foe. Outside, the battle raged on. Lyra led a desperate defense against Malakar's forces, her arrows finding marks with unerring accuracy. But for every shadow beast felled, 2 more seemed to take its place. Grimclaw fought at her side, his clever tricks and stolen magical trinkets creating pockets of safety in the chaos. "Just like old times, eh?" he called to Lyra, a manic grin on his face. But as they pushed back against the shadow horde, neither noticed Malakar weaving a spell of unspeakable darkness. By the time Whisper's warning cry reached them, it was too late. A lance of pure shadow shot towards Lyra. Time seemed to slow as Grimclaw realized what was happening. Without hesitation, the goblin threw himself into the path of the spell. "No!" Lyra screamed as the dark magic engulfed Grimclaw. When the shadows dissipated, Grimclaw lay on the ground, his body already beginning to dissolve into mist. Lyra knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. "But don't you dare die on me, you ridiculous goblin," she choked out. Grimclaw managed a weak chuckle. "Sorry, boss. Looks like this is where I cash in my chips." His eyes found Finn, who had rushed to his side. "Take care of them, short stuff. And remember, we showed him, didn't we? Monsters and humans, fighting side by side." With a final, wheezing laugh, Grimclaw closed his eyes and faded away completely. The loss of Grimclaw sent a shockwave through the army, but instead of breaking their spirit, it ignited a fire of vengeance. With renewed fury, they pushed back against the shadow horde. Inside the citadel, Thicket and his team felt the shift in the battle's energy. "Something's happened," Thicket growled, his heart heavy with foreboding. "We can't turn back now," Garrick said, though his voice was thick with emotion. "We have to press on for everyone we've lost." Finn wiped tears from his eyes, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by grim determination. "For Grimclaw," he said softly. As they approached the central keep, the very air seemed to thicken with malevolent energy. The sorcerer's voice, dripping with cruel amusement, echoed around them. "Come then, little heroes. Come and face your doom. Your army crumbles, your friends fall, and the darkness within you grows. How long before you become the very monsters you sought to defeat?" Thicket felt the curse surge within him, stronger than ever. But as he looked at his companions battered, grieving, yet unbowed, he found the strength to push it back once more. "We're coming for you, sorcerer," he growled, "and we're bringing the light with us." With that, Thicket and his team steeled themselves for the final push into the heart of the citadel. Thicket, Garrick, and Finn fought their way through the twisting corridors of the central keep, each step bringing them closer to the source of the evil that had plagued their world for centuries. The walls seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, and whispers of temptation and despair echoed in their minds. "Anyone else feel like the architecture is trying to digest you?" as Finn quipped, his humor a thin veneer over his fear. Garrick's holy sword glowed brightly, creating a bubble of light in the oppressive darkness. "Stay close," he warned. "The sorcerer's power is strongest here. We must not let our guards down." As they ascended a spiraling staircase, the air grew thick and heavy, making each breath a struggle. Thicket felt the curse within him writhing, yearning to break free. He gritted his teeth, focusing on the faces of his friends, on the memory of Grimclaw's sacrifice to keep the darkness at bay. Finally, they reached a massive set of obsidian doors, etched with runes of power that hurt the eyes to look upon. With a shared nod of determination, they pushed the doors open and stepped into the sorcerer's throne room. The chamber that greeted them defied comprehension. It seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, with sections of the floor and ceiling phasing in and out of reality. At the center stood the sorcerer himself, a figure of shadow and crackling energy, hovering before a swirling vortex of cosmic power. "Ah, the would-be heroes arrive at last," the sorcerer's voice reverberated through their very souls. "How kind of you to deliver yourselves to me." Thicket stepped forward, his massive form tense with barely contained fury. "Your reign of terror ends here, sorcerer. We've come to put an end to your evil once and for all." The sorcerer laughed, a sound that sent shivers down their spines. "End me, foolish creatures. I am beyond ending. In fact, I'm on the verge of a new beginning for all reality." With a grand gesture, the sorcerer expanded the vortex behind him. Through it, they could see glimpses of other worlds, of realms of pure shadow and chaos. "Behold the culmination of centuries of work," the sorcerer crowed. "A rift between dimensions, between the world of light and the realm of shadows. Soon, I shall merge them, recreating all of existence in my image." The implications of the sorcerer's plan hit them like a physical blow. This wasn't just about their dungeon, or even their world. The fate of all reality hung in the balance. "We won't let that happen," Garrick declared, raising his holy sword. The sorcerer's form seemed to grow, filling the chamber with his presence. "You have no choice in the matter. The merging has already begun." As if in response to his words, the rift pulsed, sending out waves of dark energy. Reality itself seemed to warp around them. Finn stumbled, his form flickering as if he were being pulled in multiple directions at once. Thicket reached out to steady his friend, only to find his own body beginning to shift and change. The curse within him roared to life, fed by the cosmic energies flooding the chamber. Garrick raised his shield, creating a bubble of holy energy around them. "Fight it," he shouted. "We can't let him win." But the sorcerer was not content to let them resist. With a wave of his hand, he summoned shadows that took the forms of their greatest fears and regrets. Thicket found himself face to face with a mirror image of his monstrous self, The beastie had been under the curse's full control. "This is your true nature," the shadow thicket growled. "Embrace it. Let go of your foolish quest for redemption." The thicket roared in defiance, but each blow he struck against his shadow self seemed to weaken his own resolve. He could feel himself slipping, the line between his true self and the cursed monster blurring with each passing moment. Nearby, Finn battled shadows of those he had failed to save, their accusing voices wearing down his usual optimism. Garrick found himself assailed by doubts given form, questioning his faith and his worthiness. The sorcerer watched their struggles with cruel amusement. "Why resist?" he taunted. "Your allies outside are falling. Your hopes are turning to ash. Give in, and at least be on the winning side of the new order." As if to punctuate his words, a psychic shockwave rippled through the chamber. Thicket felt the deaths of dozens of his allies, their lives snuffed out in an instant by the chaotic energies unleashed by the merging realms. For a moment, despair threatened to overwhelm him. The curse surged, promising power, promising an end to the pain and doubt. Thicket felt his form beginning to shift, his mind slipping towards the darkness. "Thicket," Garrick's voice cut through the haze of despair. "Remember who you are. Remember what we're fighting for." But the words seemed distant, fading. Thicket could feel himself losing the battle against the darkness within and without. The sorcerer's laughter echoed in his mind as the world around him began to dissolve into shadow. In this darkest moment, teetering on the edge of oblivion, Thicket closed his eyes. He saw flashes of his journey, the forest he once protected, the friends he had made, the battles they had fought together. He remembered Grimclaw's sacrifice, Lyra's unwavering faith in him, Finn's jokes in the face of danger. With a monumental effort of will, Thicket opened his eyes. "No," he growled, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I am not your puppet. I am not a monster. I am Thicket, guardian of the Whispering Woods, protector of the weak, friend to those who stand against the darkness." His declaration seemed to shake the very foundations of the chamber. The sorcerer's confident sneer faltered for the first time. Thicket stood tall, his form blazing with an inner light that pushed back the encroaching shadows. "And we are not done fighting yet." As Thicket's resolve solidified, Garrick and Finn found new strength as well. They rallied around their friend, their unity creating an island of stability in the chaos of the merging realms. The sorcerer's eyes narrowed. "So be it," he snarled. "If you will not yield, then you will be unmade." With that, the sorcerer unleashed the full extent of his power. The sorcerer's power crashed against Thicket, Garrick, and Finn like a tidal wave of pure malevolence. Reality buckled around them, the merging of worlds causing sections of the chamber to phase in and out of existence. Yet they stood firm, a trio of defiant pinpricks of light against the encroaching darkness. "You cannot hope to stand against the power of two realms," the sorcerer roared, his form swelling to fill the chamber. Thicket gritted his teeth, feeling the strain of holding back both the sorcerer's attack and his own inner darkness. "We will not yield," he growled, each word a battle in itself. Just as it seemed their resistance would crumble, a familiar voice echoed through the chaos. "You are not alone, old friend." A spectral form materialized beside Thicket Grimclaw, the brave goblin who had sacrificed himself earlier in the battle. His ethereal presence seemed to strengthen Thicket, easing the burden of the curse. Grimclaw Finn gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief. More spirits appeared, surrounding the embattled heroes. Lurch, the troll who had fallen into the shadow pit. Whisper, her form more solid than it had been in life. Countless others who had given their lives in the battle against the sorcerer's forces. "We stand with you," Lurch rumbled, his massive spectral form interposing itself between the heroes and a blast of shadow energy. "Our fight did not end with our deaths," Whisper added, her voice carrying a strength it had never possessed in life. The sorcerer recoiled, genuine fear flashing across his face for the first time. "Impossible. The dead cannot interfere." "You should know better than anyone," Grimclaw's spirit taunted, "that the rules change when worlds collide." Bolstered by the support of their fallen comrades, Thicket and his friends found new reserves of strength. Garrick's holy light blazed brighter, carving a path through the sorcerer's shadows. Finn moved with preternatural speed, striking at weak points in the sorcerer's defenses that only his keen eyes could spot. Outside the chamber, the tide of battle began to turn. Lyra, hearing Grimclaw's voice on the wind, rallied the surviving forces with renewed vigor. "Push forward," she cried, her arrows finding marks with uncanny accuracy. "They need us." Back in the heart of the citadel, Thicket felt a surge of connection with the natural world he had once protected. Drawing on this power, he began to push back against the sorcerer's cosmic rift. "No," the sorcerer shrieked, redoubling his efforts to complete the merging of realms. "I will not be denied." As the battle raged on multiple fronts, a group of mages who had survived the initial onslaught began a desperate ritual. Led by an elderly wizard named Eloin, they gathered at the base of the citadel, channeling every ounce of their remaining power. "What are they doing?" Finn asked, catching glimpses of the scene through the fluctuating reality of the chamber. Whisper's spirit flickered closer. "They're creating a mystical pit," she explained, her voice filled with awe. "A trap for evil itself." Understanding dawned on Garrick's face. A banishment ritual, he breathed, but the power required will be paid in blood and spirit. Grimclaw's ghost finished grimly. "But it's our best hope of ending this once and for all." The sorcerer, sensing the new threat, lashed out with tendrils of pure darkness, trying to disrupt the ritual. But the spirits of the fallen formed a protective barrier around the mages, buying them the time they needed. Thicket locked eyes with his friends, living and dead. An unspoken plan formed between them. "We need to drive him back," Thicket rumbled. "Force him into the pit when it opens." Garrick nodded, his holy sword blazing. "For redemption." "For a future worth living in," Finn added, twirling his daggers. "For all we've lost, and all we might yet save," Grimclaw's spirit concluded. With a unified battle cry that shook the foundations of the citadel, Thicket and his allies launched a final, desperate assault against the sorcerer. Living and dead fought side by side, their combined might pushing back the tide of shadow and chaos. The sorcerer fought with the frenzy of a cornered animal, unleashing spells of unspeakable power. Entire sections of the citadel crumbled, crushed between colliding realities. But for every blow he struck, the united forces of light answered with two of their own. As they drove the sorcerer back step by step, Thicket felt the curse within him pulse one final time. But now, instead of temptation, he felt only resolution. The darkness had no more power over him. With a roar that carried the weight of centuries of struggle, Thicket summoned every last ounce of his strength. Tendrils of natural energy, the lifeblood of the forest he had once guarded, wrapped around his massive form. "Your time is over," Sorcerer Thicket declared, his voice resonating with power. "The world has no place for your darkness any longer." The sorcerer's eyes widened in genuine fear as he beheld Thicket's transformation. No longer a cursed monster, nor purely the forest guardian he had once been, Thicket had become something new, a perfect balance of nature's power and hard-won wisdom. As Thicket prepared to strike the final blow, the air behind the sorcerer shimmered and tore. The mystical pit yawned open, a vortex of purifying energy that pulled at the very fabric of evil itself. The chamber trembled on the brink of chaos, reality itself fraying at the edges as the mystical pit yawned wide. Thicket, blazing with the combined power of nature and his own indomitable will, faced the sorcerer across the gulf of swirling energies. "It's over," Thicket declared, his voice carrying the weight of mountains and the whisper of leaves. "Surrender and face justice for your crimes." The sorcerer's form flickered, his confidence shattered, but his malevolence undiminished. "Never," he shrieked, his voice distorting as he drew upon the last vestiges of Shadow Realm power. "If I fall, I'll drag this entire world with me." With a gesture of cosmic malice, the sorcerer sent tendrils of pure void lashing out in all directions. Where they touched, matter simply ceased to exist, leaving behind holes in the fabric of reality itself. Garrick raised his holy shield, deflecting a tendril that would have erased Finn from existence. "We can't let this continue," he shouted over the maelstrom. "The world is literally coming apart." Thicket nodded grimly. There was only one path forward now. Gathering his power, he charged towards the sorcerer, dodging and weaving through the chaos. The sorcerer, seeing Thicket's approach, sneered. "Fool, you'll doom yourself as well." But Thicket was not alone in his charge. The spirits of the fallen rallied around him, creating a path through the destruction. Grimclaw's ghost flanked him, cackling with spectral glee. One last adventure, boss. As Thicket closed in, the sorcerer unleashed a final, desperate spell, a beam of pure annihilation that threatened to unmake everything it touched. But at the last moment, Whisper's spirit darted in front of Thicket, her ethereal form dispersing the blast. "Now, Thicket," she cried as her spirit faded. "End this." With a roar that shook the foundations of multiple realities, Thicket crashed into the sorcerer. His antlers, glowing with nature's power, pierced through the sorcerer's shadowy form. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, with a howl of rage and despair, the sorcerer began to implode, drawing in shadow and light alike. The mystical pit pulsed, sensing its prey. But the sorcerer had one last, spiteful act. As he felt himself being pulled towards oblivion, he lashed out, spectral claws sinking into Thicket's essence. "If I go," he snarled, "you're coming with me." Thicket struggled against the sorcerer's grip, feeling himself being pulled towards the pit. The curse within him, dormant but not gone, resonated with the pit's energy. For a terrifying moment, it seemed that both Thicket and the sorcerer would be cast into the abyss. Thicket, Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. She had fought her way to the chamber, bow in hand, determination etched on her face. "Hold on." In a display of incredible marksmanship, Lyra loosed an arrow wreathed in pure light. It streaked across the chamber, severing the connection between Thicket and the sorcerer. The sorcerer, his last gambit foiled, fell screaming into the mystical pit. As he vanished, the swirling vortex of cosmic energy began to collapse, reality rushing in to fill the void. But the danger was not yet past. The backlash of collapsing realms threatened to tear the chamber, and everyone in it, apart. Garrick, seeing the danger, made a split-second decision. Invoking the highest powers of his faith, he slammed his holy sword into the ground, creating a bubble of protective energy around Thicket, Lyra, and Finn. "Garrick," no, Finn cried, realizing what his friend was doing. The paladin smiled sadly. "It's okay, my friend. This is what I was meant to do." As the chamber disintegrated around them, Garrick's form began to glow with holy light. "Remember me," he said softly, "and live well." With a final flash of radiance, Garrick poured every ounce of his being into the protective sphere, shielding his friends from the collapsing realities. When the light faded and the rumbling stopped, Thicket, Lyra, and Finn found themselves in the ruins of the citadel's heart. Of Garrick, there was no sign save for his holy sword, still embedded in the cracked stone floor. The mystical pit had vanished, taking the sorcerer with it. The oppressive aura of evil that had permeated the dungeon for centuries was gone, replaced by an almost painful emptiness. Finn stumbled over to Garrick's sword, falling to his knees beside it. "He's gone," the halfling whispered, tears streaming down his face. "They're all gone." Lyra placed a hand on Finn's shoulder, her own eyes glistening. "They died as heroes," she said softly. "Every one of them." Thicket, his form slowly shifting back to a balance between his original shape and the cursed one, surveyed the destruction around them. The cost had been unimaginably high, but the sorcerer was defeated, the curse broken, and the world saved from cosmic annihilation. As the dust settled, the survivors began to emerge from the ruins of the citadel. Out of the massive army that had begun the assault, only a handful remained. Their faces were etched with grief and exhaustion, but also with the dawning realization that they had won. Thicket looked at Lyra and Finn, the last of his close companions. "It's over," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "We've won our freedom, but the price." Lyra nodded solemnly. The price was high, but they didn't die in vain. Now it's up to us to make sure their sacrifice means something. As the survivors gathered around them, looking to Thicket and his friends for guidance, the weight of the future settled upon their shoulders. The sorcerer was gone, but the world they had saved was wounded, changed. The real work of healing, of rebuilding, was just beginning. Thicket straightened, feeling the mantle of leadership settle upon him once more. "Come," he said to the assembled survivors. "We have a new world to build, one worthy of those we've lost." As they made their way out of the ruined citadel, the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. A new day was beginning for Thicket, for his friends, and for the world they had nearly lost and fought so hard to save. Dawn broke over a changed world. The Sorcerer's Citadel, once a looming monument to evil, now lay in ruins. Smoke rose from the shattered stones, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of spent magic and the metallic tang of blood. Thicket stood atop a hill overlooking the battlefield, his form a mixture of his original majestic stag shape and the more monstrous features he had gained during his curse. Around him gathered the survivors, a mere fraction of the army that had marched on the citadel just days before. Lyra approached, her quiver empty, her armor battered and stained. "We've finished the count," she said softly, her voice heavy with exhaustion and grief. Thicket nodded, bracing himself. "How many?" "Out of the thousands that marched with us, only about 300 remain," Lyra replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We've lost so many." The weight of those numbers settled over the gathering like a shroud. Thicket looked out over the faces of the survivors, humans, elves, dwarves, and former dungeon denizens alike. All bore the haunted look of those who had stared into the abyss and only narrowly escaped its grasp. Finn joined them, his usual cheerful demeanor subdued. "What do we do now?" the halfling asked, looking up at Thicket with a mix of hope and uncertainty. Thicket was silent for a long moment, feeling the eyes of the survivors upon him. The mantle of leadership sat heavily on his shoulders, but he knew he couldn't shirk this responsibility. Now he began, his deep voice carrying across the gathering, "We honor our fallen. We tend to our wounded. And then we begin the long process of healing not just our bodies, but our world." As the day wore on, the survivors worked tirelessly. Makeshift memorials were erected, bearing the names of those lost in the battle. The wounded were tended to, their injuries a stark reminder of the price paid for victory. Thicket moved among them, offering words of comfort where he could, lending his strength to those who needed it most. But with each passing hour, he felt a growing pull, a call he hadn't heard in centuries. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ruined landscape, Thicket found Lyra and Finn by Garrick's memorial. The paladin's holy sword stood upright in the earth, a beacon of light in the gathering dusk. "I can feel it," Thicket said quietly, joining his friends in their vigil. "The forest, it's calling to me." Lyra looked up at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Thicket nodded slowly. "The curse is broken. The sorcerer's gone. My task here is done." But he trailed off, looking out towards the distant tree line. "But you have another purpose to fulfill," Finn finished for him, a sad smile on his face. "The Whispering Woods has been without its guardian for too long," Thicket confirmed. "And I need to find my place in this new world we've created." Lyra placed a hand on Thicket's flank, her touch a comfort after so much violence. "We understand," she said softly. "But know this, you will always have a home with us, should you need it." Finn nodded vigorously. "Absolutely. And don't think you're getting rid of us that easily. We'll come visit, swap stories, keep you from getting too stuffy and tree-like." Thicket chuckled, the sound rumbling deep in his chest. It felt strange after so much sorrow, but also right. "I would like that," he said warmly. As night fell, Thicket addressed the survivors one last time. He spoke of hope, of the future they had fought so hard to secure. He reminded them of the sacrifices made and the bonds forged in battle. "We came together as unlikely allies," Thicket concluded, his voice carrying in the still night air. "Now, we part as friends, as family. Remember what we achieved here. Remember that when we stand united, no darkness can prevail." The next morning, as the first light of dawn painted the sky, Thicket prepared to depart. The survivors gathered to bid him farewell, many with tears in their eyes. Former monsters stood shoulder to shoulder with humans and other races, united in their respect for the one who had led them to victory. Lyra and Finn stood at the forefront, their faces a mixture of sadness and pride. "This isn't goodbye," Lyra said firmly. "It's just until we meet again." Finn grinned, though his eyes were suspiciously moist. "Yeah, and you better believe we'll have some grand adventures to tell you about when we do." Thicket looked at his friends, his heart full of emotion. "Thank you," he said simply, pouring a world of meaning into those two words. "For everything." With a final nod to the assembled survivors, Thicket turned and began his journey. As he walked towards the distant forest, his form seemed to shimmer, the last vestiges of the curse falling away. By the time he reached the first trees, he was once again the majestic guardian he had been centuries ago, but now tempered by experience, by hardship, and by the unbreakable bonds of friendship. The survivors watched until Thicket disappeared into the tree line. Then, slowly, they turned back to the task of rebuilding. They had a new world to shape, one free from the sorcerer's shadow. And though the cost had been high, they faced the future with hope, carrying the memory of their fallen comrades and the lessons learned in their hearts. As for Thicket, he ventured deep into the whispering woods, ready to take up his mantle as guardian once more. But now he carried with him the wisdom gained from his long ordeal, the strength forged in battle, and the love of the friends he had made. He was changed, as was the world around him. Seasons turned to years as Thicket reacquainted himself with the whispering woods. The forest had changed in his long absence, growing wilder and more untamed. Yet, as he moved through the ancient trees, he felt a profound sense of homecoming. At first, the forest creatures were wary of this strange being part majestic stag, part something else entirely. But gradually, they came to recognize him as their long-lost guardian. Birds would perch on his antlers, singing songs of welcome. Deer and other woodland animals would seek him out, drawn to the aura of protection and wisdom that surrounded him. Thicket found that his experiences had changed him in ways both subtle and profound. Where once he might have seen the forest as a realm separate from the world of humans and other races, he now understood the interconnectedness of all things. He used his influence to foster understanding between the forest and the settlements that had sprung up at its borders during his absence. One crisp autumn morning, as Thicket stood by a crystal-clear stream, he sensed a familiar presence. Turning, he saw Lyra emerge from the tree line, her hair streaked with grey, but her eyes as bright as ever. "I thought I might find you here," she said, a warm smile on her face. Thicket's heart swelled with joy at the sight of his old friend. "Lyra," he rumbled, moving to greet her. "It's been too long." They spent the day catching up, Lyra sharing tales of the world beyond the forest. She spoke of the rebuilding efforts, of new alliances forged between races that had once been enemies. The world was healing, slowly but surely, And Thicket asked, a note of concern in his voice. Lyra's smile turned bittersweet. "Still getting into trouble, last I heard. He's been traveling, spreading the tale of our battle. You've become quite the legend, you know." As if summoned by his name, a familiar voice called out from the trees. "Oi, are you two starting the reunion without me?" Finn stepped into the clearing, older but still spry, a grin splitting his face. "You're a hard stag to find, Thicket." The three friends spent the evening reminiscing, sharing both laughter and tears as they remembered their fallen comrades and the trials they had overcome together. As the years passed, more visitors came to the Whispering Woods, drawn by the tales of the guardian who had once been a cursed dungeon monster. Some came seeking wisdom, others forgiveness, and still others simply to pay their respects to a hero of legend. Thicket welcomed them all, sharing the lessons he had learned about redemption, unity, and the power of friendship. He found that in teaching others, he continued to heal his own lingering wounds. One day, a young forest spirit approached Thicket, her form shimmering with untamed magical energy. "Great guardian," she said, her voice like rustling leaves, "will you teach me? I wish to protect the forest as you do." Thicket looked at the young spirit, seeing in her the same earnest desire to do good that he had once possessed, but he also saw the potential for the same mistakes he had made. "Come," he said gently, "walk with me. Let me tell you a story of a forest guardian who became a monster, and then found his way back to the light with the help of unlikely friends." As they walked deeper into the woods, Thicket began to share his tale. He spoke of the importance of understanding the world beyond the forest, of the strength found in diversity, and of the courage it takes to face one's own darkness. "Remember," he told his young apprentice, "our greatest strength lies not in our power, but in our connections to others. The forest is not separate from the world, it is a part of it, as are we all." As twilight fell and fireflies began to dance among the trees, Thicket looked out over his domain. The Whispering Woods thrummed with life, and beyond its borders he could sense the bustling energy of the settlements that had grown and prospered in the years since the great battle. He thought of Garrick's sacrifice, of Grimclaw's loyalty, of all those who had fought and fallen to create this peaceful world. Their memory lived on, not just in stories, but in the very fabric of the society they had helped to build. Thicket's form shimmered in the fading light, the scars of his past visible but no longer defining him. He was neither fully the innocent guardian he had once been, nor the cursed monster he had feared becoming. He was something new, a being tempered by hardship, enriched by friendship, and dedicated to nurturing the delicate balance between all living things. As night fell and the stars emerged, Thicket raised his voice in a song of gratitude for second chances, for unlikely friendships, and for the endless possibility of redemption. The whispering woods took up the song, carrying it on the wind to lands far beyond the forest's edge. And in distant taverns and cozy homes, those who heard the ethereal melody felt a stirring in their hearts, a reminder of the battles fought, the sacrifices made, and the enduring power of hope in the face of darkness. Thank you so very much for listening to this story. I thoroughly hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe, leave a like, and comment too. I hope to see you on the next adventure.